Hey, folks, and welcome to another edition of Tech Talks with Celestial Systems. I'm your host, Richard Wong, and with me today is Harp Dhinsa, CTO of Faber Technologies. How are you today, Harp?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for hopping on with us today.
For sure, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Why don't you fill the audience in? Can you tell us a little bit about your background, kind of what you do for Faber and sort
Yeah,
of the
totally.
story?
I'm like a guy that's been super into tech since I was younger. Learned MS DOS when I was a kid. Kind of
Okay.
made like online flash games in high school. So I really liked kind of tinkering with technology, and I kind of went into the corporate industry, but didn't really like it, and then went into the startup scene. And from there, I found Faber. They really needed help building their app and their technology, so I joined there. And since then, my role has basically grown to make hiring decisions for the tech team, also do some programming myself. Like me and one other developer, we wrote the original version of the app as well as the algorithms that run the system. And
Wow.
yeah, that's kind of been my journey there and slowly growing the company to take on the construction industry and make it more modernized.
Nice. Yeah, I have heard of Faber, and you guys are doing some good work. For those that don't know, what is it that Faber does?
Yeah, so Faber is a marketplace that connects construction workers with construction companies. So it's essentially like you could think of it like Uber or DoorDash or those kinds of apps where there's two-sided marketplace. So there's construction workers who are looking for work. They can fill in their profile, fill in their information, and there's construction companies who have needs for workers. And we service mostly like the temporary labor agency style market. So when a condo tower is going up, maybe next week they need like five general laborers on site to help
Hmm.
out, or a carpenter or two. It could be like a single day request of workers, or like a week or a couple months, but needs of a construction site change on and off. So our app kind of helps facilitate that. So they can just go into the app, be like, hey, I need this, these skills, these certificates, these tools, this kind of worker. And they can put in the request, and then our algorithm kind of matches it to people in the area that fulfill that need or fulfill that skill, like certifications. So those workers can then see that job in their app and they can accept or decline it. So
Okay.
yeah, it's basically a
Cool.
marketplace for construction.
Nice. And how is that different from sort of the traditional way of, I guess, building a team?
Yeah, good question. So I guess our biggest competition, or we're trying to disrupt a little bit, is the temporary labor agency market. So I don't know if
Hmm.
you know too much about how the temporary labor agency markets work in Vancouver as well as other cities across North America and probably the world. But
Yeah.
the way that they work is every morning there's a lineup outside their door of people looking for work.
Oh, okay.
So they get phone calls from construction companies like, "Hey, I need like five guys to come move materials on this, apartment building that we're building today. Who can you send?" So they go down that line. Now they're like, "Hey, you go to this site over here. Here's the address." So those guys go to that site. They take a little form with them, which the supervisor on the site is going to record how many hours they worked, and
Yeah.
then they bring that form back at the end of the day to that place where they got the job. They show that form to them. Then they write them a check.
Wow.
So as you
Okay.
can see, it's super old school. This is exactly how it's still
That sounds
happening
so,
today.
yeah, it's like that sounds like a movie or something. Like I've seen this in many movies. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's several of these located around Vancouver and all over. That's how they're currently operating, and it's so inefficient. Obviously, you can probably see where the glaring inefficiencies are and where
Oh,
technology
100%.
can improve it. So, yeah, I mean that's kind of what we decided to tackle. It's kind of how
Okay.
it works and what we're trying to disrupt. So.
Cool. I mean, it seems like you guys definitely have a leg up. I mean, even from a, just human efficiency standpoint, right? It's like someone going to the labor line and they might not even get a job then that day, right? They
Yeah,
might even be turned
exactly.
down and they have to go home or commute home, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now you can literally wake up, like look at your jobs list in the morning or the night before or even a week before. So you're not like kind of scrambling last minute.
Yeah.
And then you can see exactly what the job's going to entail. You don't know, like, it's not like an unknown variable where you're going to be going or whatever, right?
Right.
And how much you're going to be being paid. So, like, obviously, companies pay different amounts as well, but our app is very transparent on how much you're going to get paid. And we have one of the highest rates that we pay the workers compared to every other agency because we're so much more efficient, right? So
Right.
we
Right.
can we can give that extra dollar to the worker if he needs.
Pass the savings on, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, okay. Switching gears a little bit here, Harp. What would you say are some of the common misconceptions that people have about I guess, labor industry, the recruiting industry, the HR industry? What are some of the common misconceptions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of the common misconceptions are people think it has to be a very manual, tedious process. With the use of technology, as we're doing at Faber and, like other industries people are doing as well, like you can definitely automate this a lot. For example, just like the temporary staffing side of it, traditionally you don't know what kind of worker you're going to get. You don't see ratings or reviews or anything like that. But all with technology, we can automate a lot of that, so you can know upfront what kind of worker you could be expecting, or you can look through a list of workers and pick the best one, not just based off of like a small resume or something, but like actual things that they've done through our platform or other platforms, like actual ratings from other contractors and construction companies that they've worked with. Things like that can obviously change the game a lot. And then when you have more data, especially like through our platform, we can see where workers have worked, how long they've worked for, what skills they've logged on each day that they've worked on each site. So with that information, we can actually calculate a score how good a worker is going to be on this project versus that project. So having that kind of information is really changing staffing.
Yeah.
And in terms of recruiting, like kind of the same thing, right? Like recruiting has been a very tedious process, looking through resumes, trying to find the right fit. I
Mhm.
feel like there's a lot of things that can be done that, you know, don't necessarily have to be so boring and like just like going through papers of
Yeah.
resumes and all that, right? So
Okay.
yeah, I think automation is and in the use of technology and potentially AI in the future is something that can be super helpful. And
Nice.
yeah,
So you mentioned AI. I know it's sort of like the one of the latest buzzwords, right? That everyone's kind of talking about AI, machine learning, that kind of
yeah,
stuff, right?
yeah, totally.
Yeah. What I guess what implications does it have for I guess your industry, and like what are the applications that you guys are thinking about using it for, if not
Yeah,
already?
so yeah, in our industry, obviously there's a lot you can do in terms of just knowing the performance of a worker through AI. Like we kind of have some machine learning that's running in our systems right now, which calculates a score, like I was saying earlier. But
Mhm.
taking that further, you have AI do all of that. Like it's a step beyond just machine learning, and then basically have the needs of the contractor, the construction company side as well of what they want, and
Right.
create a perfect match that way. And then also scheduling, right? Because right now construction companies kind of have schedules that are probably not the most efficient, but if they had all the data fed into an AI, then that AI could schedule what workers are needed on site today versus tomorrow, when
Mhm.
the materials are coming in, when we need to get another couple GLs on the site, general laborers to help move those materials, when there's like a delay in a material being shipped to a site, auto adjusting the entire next week's schedule or 2 month schedule, whatever's needed, right? Right now, that's a very manual process,
I see.
but AI can help with all that within probably minutes to seconds of what someone will spend hours doing. So
But that's cool. Yeah, you mentioned sort of like AI just sort of doing calculations and like sussing out different workers. What are some of the, I guess, if you can reveal, what are some of the metrics that I guess workers are scored on, kind of behind the
yeah,
scenes?
for sure. So the biggest metric is how many hours you've worked through our platform.
Okay.
Then we have how many projects you worked on, how many positive ratings versus negative ratings. We also track how many no shows there are. So in
Oh, okay.
construction, it's somewhat common, I guess, compared to other industries that workers no show, and construction companies are kind of, like they're known to like have awareness of that.
Mhm.
But we strive to make that a no show rate the lowest possible.
Mhm.
So that's something that we find very important to, obviously score a worker, because if the worker is going to be no showing on a bunch of jobs, then that's not the ideal person to send out to a construction company, right?
For
So
sure.
there's that, and then as well as like now we track lates. If a worker withdraws for whatever reason, so we kind of use that to crunch some numbers and create a score that's live updated every day. So based on that, our algorithm can then send not only based on that number, but also based on the requirements of the job and what tools the worker has versus what's needed and all that stuff, including distance, job, and all that stuff.
Cool. I mean, yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And then in terms of the recruiting side, like we're also trying to get into a lot of construction recruiting, and recruiting platforms are also kind of old school, a lot
mhm.
of them. So a
Right.
lot of recruiting processes that we've dealt with have been like, reach out to a recruiter, then the recruiter has to understand what our needs are, like even hiring a developer, right? So if I need to hire a developer for my team, I have to translate what's in my head to this recruiter. Then this recruiter has to translate that into job posting. Then that job posting has to like somehow convey the message to the person that's applying to the job. And on the other
Right.
side of the equation, you have the applicant who's like a developer in the situation. They know what they are in their head. They know their
Right.
experience. They know what the codes, like what code they've written, what projects they worked on. They have to kind of put that into a resume, and then that resume has to be submitted. It's like taking all this information and kind of shoving it through this small little hole. Like the bandwidth is not there.
Yeah,
to make like the optimal decision, right? But
for
with
sure.
AI, like on both sides, that can really improve the situation because imagine like my needs as someone hiring can be completely understood by an AI, right? And
Mhm.
then they can make a decision of finding who's the right candidate versus on the candidate side. Um, if basically, like so imagine like your GitHub or something like
Yeah.
could be scanned, and then like the system knows what kind of developer you are if you fit with what you worked on, for this company and what their needs are. So it could definitely like make a better decision overall. So that's kind of what I'm excited to see where
Yeah.
recruitment and staffing goes with AI.
Yeah. That, I mean, that seems really in alignment, right? Like in alignment, like you mentioned, not only for the recruiter but also for the employee as well, right? Because um, usually it's like, oh, like I'm thinking like, oh, are these AIs like optimizing for like each side has their own different optimizations? Like, no, they're both
Yeah,
optimizing for one endpoint, right? They like
yeah,
the worker
exactly.
has to love working there, and the recruiter has to love having them on, right? Otherwise,
Yeah,
if it's not a
exactly.
win-win situation, then there's one equilibrium, right?
Yeah, totally.
Optimized for, yeah,
Yeah, it
cool,
should be best for both parties. So
yeah, cool. Um, okay, yeah, well, thanks a lot for hopping on, Harp. Any last things you want to chat about, or?
no, honestly, just excited to be part of this. And yeah, if anyone has any needs for construction, obviously check out Faber Connect.
Yeah, actually, I've got a question. One last question is, where are you guys, I guess, where do you see the evolution of Faber in the next few years? Where are you guys moving to?
So yeah, one big passion that we have is actually not just providing a job to a worker in like the skill level that they want or they're currently at. Sorry, it's more of like leveling them up and skilling them up. So when you compare this to, like Uber, like if you're an Uber driver for like 10 years, you're still like an Uber driver, right?
Right.
But we want it to be where you can come into Faber as a general laborer, but then through this platform also skill up and learn and get to a point where you're like a skilled carpenter,
Hmm.
or whatever the trade you really want to learn and like develop. So that's kind of what we're working towards, and that's one of
I
our
like that.
passions.
That's really cool. It's like increasing value for everybody, right? It's like you're
Exactly. Yeah.
increasing how valuable the person is and their output, right? Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Totally.
Sweet. Okay, well, thanks again for hopping on with us today, Harp, and it was a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah. Same. Thanks.
Yeah.
Talk to you later. See
All
ya.
right.